Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to this special edition of PHLY Flyers. Joining us today, as hopefully she will, weekly for the rest of the season, former video coach and analyst for the Vancouver Canucks and New Jersey Devils, now the CTO of Betalytics, an ESPN contributor, and you can hear her weekly co-hosting the Puck Social podcast. Can't believe she had time to join us. It's Rachel Doerrie back with us on PHLY. Welcome, Rachel. Great to see you again this season.
So happy to be back. Absolutely love the vibes. The Flyers are constant entertainment, and I can't wait to talk about them every week.
It's very funny. Like, Charlie and I constantly joke, we have a job for life talking about this team. Like, they haven't been good in 10 years. They have had very few players even worth talking about. And somehow, like, 0.4 on 32 thoughts this week is a Flyers point. And it is always. It's tremendous talking about this team. But, Rachel, I want to start in the center of the hockey universe because we spend so much time on the Flyers here. I need some outside perspective sometimes, talk about some other teams, figure out what's going on around the league. So I want to go with the old Toronto Maple Leafs. I just got to know, is Auston Matthews broken into several pieces and he's actually in Germany to be Frankensteined back together? Is that what's going on? Like, what is up in Toronto with, the guy who scored 69 goals last year?
Yeah, so you've actually come to the right place because I have done some work with the German Soccer Federation, and I know the doctor in question. So this guy, there you go, right? This is actually not the first time Matthews has seen him. He saw him in the summer. And this particular individual used to be the head of the medical team for the German national soccer team, which was widely considered to be at the forefront, cutting edge of many sports injuries, injury prevention, different things like that. The man is like in his 70s and he's retired as the chief of the medical team, but he is still their chief medical advisor and oversees the department in terms of the research that gets done. And we're talking about the guy that Christian McCaffrey also saw. And so when you think about this, I think this is less about the severity of the injury and more about the evaluation of the injury and how to manage this going forward so that it doesn't become a recurring situation. Those are some things that in Germany they really look for when it comes to sports injuries. They're not worried about injury management as much as they are researching, A, how can we prevent this? And B, what are the signs that can show a player is reaching their injury threshold to potentially maybe scale back on minutes, scale back on workload, different things like that. So I think there's a full evaluation happening here. Obviously concerning that he's had to do this twice, but when you think about it, there is no better doctor to go to. And I will point out, he doesn't just see anybody. He is very particular and deliberate about who he sees. So the Leafs are extraordinarily lucky that he's opted to help them out.
That it's great for the Leafs, great for Matthews, and like just great for the league because I want to see Auston Matthews, like, Team USA without Matthews in this Four Nations face-off. Like, don't love it. Don't.
Yeah,
really
he'll be back.
that.
He'll be back well before then.
It's just I want to see guys like this. We're already looking ahead to, okay, well, Ovechkin, when he comes back, he's going to break this record. Could Matthews even break that? Well, he needs to be healthy to do it, and we're kind of looking forward to that for the rest of his career. So good news for him. Pretty cool that he is getting this sort. It is funny to think, though, like, how much is the NHL going to love? Oh, yeah, man. We're talking about load management here. Let's figure out what it takes to keep guys healthy. That sounds like something the NHL's real interested in. But
Joel Embiid ring a bell, anybody?
Injury threshold. I don't know. Let's just play him and see how it goes. Oh, he's hurt again. There's a shock. I want to move to the Pittsburgh Penguins, Rachel, listening to Puck Social from your show last week. And you guys were very critical of the job that Kyle Dubas is doing and kind of the way that team has been put together, keeping that core together, going and getting Erik Karlsson, all of that. And rightfully so. Minus 26 goal differential, worst in the league. That's right, worse than freaking San Jose. 4 regulation wins on the season. But my question is, do people outside of the Metro and people outside of maybe like this interstate rivalry we have with the Pens realize this is all building towards Pittsburgh getting another first overall pick? Like, are you worried about that? And do you realize that that is what's going to happen here?
I mean, it feels ridiculous. There are actually three teams that should probably just be banned from generational talents for the next little while. They're the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Edmonton Oilers. Like, the Oilers have had Gretzky and all of his merry men. Now they have Draisaitl and McDavid. The Blackhawks went from Kane and Taves and everyone else to Connor Bedard. Like, and Artem Levshunov when he comes in. Like, it just frankly shouldn't be allowed. And then you have the Penguins, who went from Mario Lemieux to Sidney Crosby with overlap. There was a season they played together. Like, all of them barred from generational talents. It's not permitted. It's not allowed. But when you look at it, I think as long as Crosby, Malkin, and Letang are playing, unless they physically win the lottery, they're not going to be able to bottom out. Because Crosby and Malkin, less so Letang, but Crosby and Malkin are still just so good, right? Crosby's defensive value has fallen off this year, which honestly is not totally unexpected given the situations the Penguins are playing him in and the line mates that he's playing with. Brian Rust, by my model, is the worst player on the Penguins right now. And I'm like, that's not great. That's top line player. Like, it's a really big problem. Whereas Rickard Rakell has actually been really good for the Penguins. You look at this, and the Penguins are in this very weird situation where it is literally impossible to bottom out when you have 4 Hall of Famers on your team. The problem is they can't get a save to save their lives, quite literally. And the supporting cast around those players is god awful. And they've locked themselves in with these contracts. And you want, like, I'm one of those people, honestly, Bill, like, I want them to spend their entire careers there. I never want to see Crosby, Malkin, or Letang in a different jersey. I hate it. I don't want to see it. And so it's kind of one of those things where if you're a Penguins fan, you don't actually get to complain. You've won 3 cups. You've had dynasty after dynasty. So you take your medicine and you're terrible for a little while, and nobody's going to have any sympathy for you.
No, they've won 5 cups in my lifetime. They have a never-ending parade of Hall of Fame players on their team. Like, and that's
the thing. They have 2 guys on Mount Rushmore. Like, what are we talking about here?
It's they had a 4-year period where they picked no lower than 2. Or no higher than 2, like, however you want to say it. But, like, it's very frustrating to just know, they probably can't bottom out because Crosby's freaking awesome and Malkin having a good bounce back year. But they are 6th from the bottom right now. And I can't imagine a team of 35-plus-year-olds gets better in February. Like, I don't think that's how the aging curve works, but we'll see. Crosby is still... Like, he's a 90-point player still. It's unbelievable. He's almost 40 years old, and he's just out there killing it. But I fully expect them to defy the odds and win a lottery at some point. It's very much on the table.
Maybe it's not this year, but, like, if they finish with a top 10 pick, the draft this year doesn't have the generational Bedard, obviously. But, like, they're going to get a sick player. Like, they might get Matthew Schaefer out of Erie at 5 or 6. They're probably not getting Porter Martone, who's a massive center who they could probably use. But Matthew Schaefer, a great defenseman. I really like him. Michael Misa is an extraordinarily talented forward. They're going to get a sick player if they draft in the top 10. And quite frankly, wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those years where more players are NHL ready. They're just not superstars off the hop, right? So maybe you're not getting the generational talent that's ready right away, but you could have 4 or 5 players that are top line players that are going to have long careers that are ready to go right away.
And one of those guys will end up living with Sidney Crosby and develop his habits and be the best ever. It's just the way it goes. Rachel, we saw Jim Montgomery fired by Boston like 2 days ago. And I get it. You look at their situation. This is the NHL. Coaches of underachieving teams get fired. That's just what happens. And I bet we see a bunch of dominoes start to fall over the next month or so because we all know, American Thanksgiving. If you're not in the playoffs, then you probably ain't going to the playoffs. But Boston's problem, is it not more of a roster composition problem than a coaching problem? I like Jim Montgomery a lot. Maybe I'm biased, but how good are they even supposed to be that you're firing your coach in the middle of November?
Yeah, so there's two more coaches, Mike Sullivan and Andrew Brunette, in some trouble, we'll say. Here's the thing, is Jim Montgomery and Mike Sullivan are really, really solid coaches. And that's not a slight against Andrew Brunette. We're talking about guys with legit track records here, though. And they'll be out of work as long as they choose to be out of work. And so it's kind of one of those things with Jim Montgomery. You look at Boston, this is the third year in a row where a lot of people have said, this is the year that Boston falls off. They staved it off for 2 years. This is finally the year. This has been coming for a long, long time, and they were able to mask it. There are a few things they haven't been able to mask this year. Jeremy Swayman did not have training camp because Cam Neely decided that he needed to publicly, just air out their dirty relationship laundry. We talked about this on Puck Social when the episode drops tomorrow. You look at this and it's you're in a relationship and all of a sudden your significant other goes to everyone on social media and starts airing your dirty laundry out. That's not good for the relationship. So you didn't have a good camp. There's a fractured relationship. That's not a good sign. Then you have no centers. Elias Lindholm hasn't been good enough. Pavel Zacha's playing the wing a lot. Charlie Coyle hasn't been good enough. Okay, great. Brad Marchand's in his late 30s. That's not great. David Pastrnak not scoring at a high enough clip. That's not great. Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy have been pretty good, but outside of that, the Bruins are a disaster, and it's the contract situation. They have an aging core, guys who have retired in Bergeron. I do think that room in the past couple of years has lost a ton of the quote-unquote Bruins culture. They lost Chara, they lost Bergeron. Nick Foligno was a big part of that. You look at the vibes there, and the vibes are no longer the Bruins vibes. And I think that's a bigger problem. Jim Montgomery is the easiest to fire, but in my eyes, I look at this and I go, this is a Cam Neely problem, because there have been some decisions over the last few years, Mitchell Miller being at the top of that list, where you kind of scratch your head and you go, what are they doing? This is not what we're used to from the Boston Bruins. And so I think there maybe needs to be some looking in the mirror happening in Massachusetts, and there's not been a lot of that in the last 2 decades.
That's it's kind of been a set and forget team for so long that you're oh, well, this thing will just keep rolling along. And you name the players that have retired, have moved on, add Krejci, add Tuukka Rask, now Linus Ullmark, guys that they leaned on, they're all gone. Brad Marchand still here. He's older than me. It's at a certain point, you need to reload, and they just haven't. Lindholm needs to be better. Also, in no world is he a 1C. No. Oh, yeah, perfect 2C for you. But this is a team with no centers, and you're putting him a line up, and that moves everyone else a line up, and finally it's kind of coming unraveled for them. I think it's more good job, Jim Montgomery, holding it together the last 2 years and winning a President's Trophy, getting this team to top of the division a couple of times. And now it's finally, okay, we have nothing left.
Well, and you look at it, he won the Jack Adams and they made him a lame duck coach, heading into the final year of his contract. That right there speaks to the Bruins culture situation. What I think is happening here is not only are guys retiring and you're losing that side of it, but there's clearly been some culture stuff that is now bleeding into the locker room and bleeding onto the ice. And you're seeing it, and it's becoming more prevalent and more obvious. And Scotty Bowman could go behind that bench. If you don't have it between the ears, you do not have it. Jim Montgomery is a really good coach. Last year, I thought was one of the best coaching performances in the last decade by any NHL coach based on what he did. And the fact that he's now got the guy that the axe falls on, I mean, if I'm the Jacobs family, I'm asking Cam Neely a lot of questions.
Absolutely. And I want to wrap up with a little bit of Flyers talk here, because we get so wrapped up in the day-to-day. And like I said at the top, like, you know, I sit here and talk about Morgan Frost for 40 minutes. I want to bang my head against the wall. There's so much day-to-day to talk about that sometimes we lose a little bit of sight of the outside perspective, especially with John Tortorella as the coach. There's always something. What's your impression of the Flyers? They're 20 games in now. Basically the same roster as last season, but now they've added 19-year-old Matvei Michkov to the proceedings. He's leading all rookies in scoring. But beyond that, it's the same team. What is your impression of the Flyers thus far?
Yeah, honestly, I actually think the Flyers are a very entertaining team to watch. I watch a lot of Flyers hockey. One, I used to work with Brad Shaw, so like I'm just curious for him. Matvei Michkov is near appointment television for me. This guy is wildly entertaining. I absolutely love it. But I look at this from the Flyers perspective. From a metrics perspective, they are underperforming last year. Like last year, from an expected goals perspective at 5-on-5, they were actually above the watermark. Now they're sitting at like 46%. That's not a good sign. And I think when you look at it, Joel Farabee is lost out there. Him and Trevor Zegras are my two like lost puppies of the year. Like they just kind of, nobody really knows what the heck is going on there. And I think he does need a change of scenery. Morgan Frost hasn't been very good. Travis Konechny is scoring at a point a game, but outside of his actual point totals, he has been terrible in terms of defensive value, possession value, drawing penalties, all like even strength value. Sure, he's putting the puck in the net, but if he's not doing that, he's a detriment to the team, and you can't have that. Sean Couturier has been really good in terms of value. Travis Sanheim, I mean, Hockey Canada has a stacked blue line in terms of who they have, but I would seriously be taking a look at him. He has been absolutely fantastic, and I think one of the more underrated sort of rebound seasons because he struggled a little bit last year. I think Ristolainen's been better than expected, but he's likely to get moved. So when you look at it, the Flyers have some really good pieces. Then we get to Michkov. This guy is bananas. He is, if I were a Flyers fan, I would show up just to watch him play. Just ISO cam. I just want to watch him play. If I'm Comcast and I'm showing Flyers games, there's an ISO cam on Michkov the whole game, like in the bottom corner. Or you should be able to select like Michkov cam or whatever. The stuff this guy does is wild. And I will say, I actually really like how Philly is handling him. When he plays, he plays. But every so often, he sits in the press box. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. If you look at what the Ducks did with Leo Carlsson last year, it was about getting him acclimated, but they believed he was too good for the AHL, just like Michkov is, way too good for the AHL. But there are some times where you're like, hey, you still got to learn some stuff. There's obviously a language barrier there. And Michkov is such an intelligent, cerebral player that he could watch a couple of games in the press box and understand what's being pointed out to him, be it on video or on the whiteboard, whatever the case may be. And so I think the Flyers are actually doing a really good job of striking that balance of when he is in the lineup, he's getting all the opportunities. But sometimes you need to take a step back, and instead of throwing him on the fourth line like some other coaches would, they go, hey, take a seat in the press box and actually take the game in. That's how you're going to learn. So I really agree and like this Flyers approach with Michkov. I think it's going to benefit him long term. I don't think the Flyers are that far away. They just need some more guys to come up. They still need to continue to draft well. Guys like Oliver Bonk need to kind of step up. Denver Barkey is another one that I think Flyers fans should be really excited about. But the reality of the situation is they're just not there yet.
Yeah, the team is still, I think, in an evaluation phase, and that's what in about 40 minutes our show today is going to be about. Like, are we ready to make, sweeping declarations about guys yet? Now, after last year and 20 games this year, but it has been a lot of fun watching Michkov, and even the games that you can just tell he's off, maybe he's a little tired, whatever it is, he still makes one play that you go, oh, hell yeah. This guy is
like,
real.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, like this guy is real freaking good. Rachel, you are a really good guest as well. Can't wait to make you a part of this weekly going forward. Thanks for joining us. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I love coming on, so hopefully we'll do this often. But if you want to hear hockey talk / vibe talk, all kinds of craziness, life chats, Puck Social podcast drops every Friday. We got clips on the gram. That's good. If you like sports betting, all of my models are now publicly available at Betalytics.com, so you can go there. We have a new site launching January 1st. And then, yeah, I write for ESPN. So those are really the only places you can find me now. But a lot of people were asking for the models, and, well, now the models are available.
Well, I could certainly, I might be paying a visit because I'm getting my ass kicked this year. So maybe Betalytics can help us out a little. Rachel, thank you so much, and hopefully we have you on again very, very soon.
We all silly like the mayor.